The first time I saw the words "position filled" was on my wife's phone. The second time, they appeared in a company-wide email. The third time, they were printed across a recruitment poster I had designed myself. I had written the original joke 3 nights earlier. Accepting wife applications. Benefits include coffee, emotional support, and unlimited arguments about dinner. I had sent it to my wife, Evelyn, expecting the usual eye roll. Instead, she replied, "Position filled." I smiled when I read it. I thought she was teasing me. I didn't know she had already decided I was no longer the man she wanted beside her. Our marriage had lasted 7 years. 7 years of knowing exactly how she took her coffee, which meetings she hated, which songs she played when she was stressed, and how she became completely silent when something was bothering her. I knew all of that. What I didn't know was how easy it had become for her to live without needing me. Evelyn wasn't just my wife. She was the CEO of Veilcrest Technologies, a company she had built from a small rented office into one of the fastest-growing software firms in the city. And I was the man everyone assumed had married into her success. They weren't entirely wrong. I had no executive title, no expensive car, no corner office. I worked quietly in the background. When Evelyn's company was still small, I handled vendor contracts, repaired broken laptops, negotiated with suppliers, and sometimes stayed awake until 3 in the morning helping her prepare investor presentations. I never complained, because when we were younger, she had once looked at me across a tiny apartment kitchen and said, "When I make it, you'll be there with me, right?" I had laughed. Where else would I go? She had held out her little finger. "Promise." I hooked mine around hers. "Promise." That memory came back to me the night I found the message. I was sitting alone in our bedroom, holding her phone because she had left it charging beside the bed. A message appeared. "Daniel." She finally agreed to the announcement. "We should tell the board tomorrow." Daniel Cross, her chief strategy officer. I knew his name. Everyone did. He had joined Veilcrest 2 years earlier and quickly became the person Evelyn trusted most at work. I had never been jealous of him. Not then. I opened the message only because another one followed. "Daniel, and what about Ryan?" My hand stopped moving. Evelyn's reply appeared beneath it. "Evelyn, I'll handle him." I stared at those 3 words for a long time. I'll handle him. Not I'll talk to my husband. Not I'll explain. Just, I'll handle him. The bedroom suddenly felt unfamiliar. When Evelyn came home 40 minutes later, she found me sitting at the dining table. She dropped her handbag onto the chair. "You're still awake?" "Couldn't sleep." She glanced at me. "Everything okay?" I almost asked her. Instead, I smiled. "Yeah." She walked over and kissed my forehead. For a second, I almost believed everything was normal. Then she said, "I have a big announcement tomorrow." My chest tightened. "What kind of announcement?" She hesitated. "The board wants me to make some changes." "What changes?" She looked away. "Personal ones." I nodded slowly. "Right." She didn't notice that my smile had disappeared. Or maybe she did. She simply didn't ask. That was the first thing that hurt. The second came the next morning. At 9:03 a.m., every employee at Veilcrest received an email. Subject: Leadership Restructuring. I opened it at the kitchen counter. The message announced that Daniel Cross had been promoted to executive president and would be working directly alongside Evelyn on the company's next expansion. At the bottom was a sentence that made my fingers go cold. Mr. Ryan Hale will no longer be involved in internal company operations or strategic consulting. I read it twice. Then a third time. I wasn't an employee. I didn't have a contract. But for 7 years, I had been there. Every crisis, every launch, every investor meeting, every sleepless night. And she had removed me with one sentence. Without telling me. Without even looking me in the eyes. When Evelyn came downstairs, I was still holding the phone. She saw the email. Her expression barely changed. "I was going to tell you." "When?" "Today. After everyone else knew." She sighed. "Ryan, please don't make this emotional." I looked at her. How am I supposed to make it? She didn't answer. And somehow, that silence hurt more than any explanation could have. That evening, I went back to the apartment where Evelyn and I had first lived together. It had been sold years ago, but I still remembered the narrow balcony, the cheap curtains, and the tiny kitchen where we used to split one bowl of noodles because neither of us had enough money for 2 meals. Back then, Evelyn had dreams bigger than our lives. I had believed in every one of them. I remembered the night she received her first serious investment offer. She had run through the apartment screaming, Ryan. They said yes. I had laughed. Then we're rich. We're not rich. We're almost rich. She had thrown herself into my arms. I couldn't have done this without you. I didn't need her money. I needed those words. I needed to know that the life we were building belonged to both of us. Standing there years later, I realized something uncomfortable. Maybe she had stopped believing that a long time ago. When I returned home, Evelyn was waiting. We need to talk. I sat across from her. She looked exhausted. I know you're angry. I'm not angry. You're obviously angry. I shook my head. No, I'm disappointed. She looked down. Ryan, is Daniel the reason? Her head lifted immediately. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. There's nothing going on between us. I hadn't even asked whether they were sleeping together. But she had answered the question anyway. I leaned back. So there is something? No. Then why are you defending him? I'm not defending him. I'm trying to protect the company. The company. I repeated the words quietly. That's always your answer now. She rubbed her forehead. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Then explain it. I can't. Why? Because you wouldn't understand. Something inside me went still. 7 years. I had spent 7 years trying to understand her. Her fears. Her ambitions. Her anger. Her silence. And now she was telling me I was incapable of understanding her. I stood. Okay. She looked surprised. That's it. Yes. You don't want to argue? No. You're just going to walk away? I looked at her. I think I've been walking away for a long time. I just didn't realize it. I went upstairs. That night, I opened the drawer beside my bed and found an old photograph. Evelyn and I at 26. Poor. Tired. Happy. She was holding a paper cup of coffee, and I was laughing at something outside the frame. On the back, she had written, "No matter how far we go, don't let success make us strangers." I sat there for almost an hour. Then I placed the photograph back in the drawer. I didn't confront her again. I didn't ask about Daniel. I didn't demand explanations. I didn't beg her to choose me. Instead, I became quiet. At first, Evelyn seemed relieved, then confused. She would come home and ask, "Why are you so quiet?" I'd answer, "Just tired." She would ask, "Are you upset?" No. She began watching me more carefully. I stopped asking about her meetings. Stopped waiting up for her. Stopped reminding her about appointments. Stopped preparing the lunches she always forgot to eat. Stopped fixing the small problems she never noticed. Nothing dramatic happened. That was what made it frightening. I simply stopped reaching. And Evelyn noticed. One Friday night, she came home after midnight. I was sitting in the living room with a suitcase beside me. She froze. "What's that?" "My suitcase." "Why?" "I've decided to stay somewhere else for a while." Her face changed. "You mean you're leaving?" I nodded. She laughed nervously. "For how long?" "I don't know." "Ryan, don't do this." I looked at her calmly. "I'm not doing anything to you." She stepped closer. "Then what are you doing?" For the first time in 7 years, I answered without trying to protect her feelings. "I'm choosing myself." She stared at me. I picked up the suitcase. At the door, she whispered, "You'll come back." I paused. I almost turned around. Then I remembered the words on her phone. "I'll handle him." I looked back at my wife. "I used to think home was wherever you were." Her eyes reddened. "And now?" I opened the door. "Now I think home is somewhere I don't have to beg to belong." Then I walked out. The first night away from Evelyn, I slept in a hotel room that smelled like detergent and stale air. I expected to feel free. Instead, I felt like someone had removed a piece of my body and left the wound open. I woke up at 4:17 in the morning and reached for my phone. For years, Evelyn had been the first person I messaged when I couldn't sleep. My thumb hovered over her name. Then I put the phone down. I didn't want to send "I miss you." Not because I didn't. Because I knew exactly what would happen. She would answer when it was convenient. She would say she was busy, and I would spend the next day pretending that a few words from her were enough. So I didn't write anything. The next morning, I rented a small studio above an old bookstore on the other side of the city. It wasn't impressive. The ceiling had water stains. The elevator made a terrible grinding sound. The kitchen could barely fit one person. But nobody there knew me as Evelyn Vale's husband. For the first time in years, I could introduce myself without watching someone's expression change. I began looking for work. That was when I discovered how strange my situation had become. My resume was full of things I had done for Valecrest, but almost none of them had official titles. Operations support, vendor negotiations, process design, emergency project management, financial modeling, technical troubleshooting. I had learned everything because Evelyn needed someone who could solve problems. But I had never bothered to give myself credit for being the person who solved them. At my third interview, a small logistics company called Northline Systems asked me a simple question. What exactly are you good at? I almost said, helping people. Instead, I thought about 7 years of chaos. I find problems before they become expensive. The interviewer smiled. Can you prove it? 2 days later, he gave me access to one of their delivery systems. I found 12 recurring inefficiencies in less than a week. One of them was costing the company thousands every month. They hired me. My salary was less than a quarter of what Evelyn made. I didn't care. For the first time, my work had my name on it. I came home one evening and found a package outside my door. No return address. Inside was my favorite navy sweater. Evelyn had packed it. There was also a note. You forgot this. I stared at the handwriting. For a moment, I wanted to call her. Then I noticed something else. At the bottom of the note, almost as an afterthought, she had written, "Come home when you're ready. Not I want you home. Not I miss you. Just come home." As if my absence were temporary. As if the final decision still belonged to her. I folded the note and placed it inside the drawer. I didn't respond. 3 weeks passed. Then 1 month. Evelyn called 6 times. I answered none of them. Eventually she stopped. I thought that would hurt. It didn't. What hurt was realizing how much of my life had depended on waiting for her to notice me. At Northline, things slowly changed. My manager, Marcus, was a blunt man in his 50s who hated corporate politics. One afternoon, he dropped a thick folder onto my desk. We're bidding for a regional distribution contract. I opened it. This is too big for us. I know. Then why are you giving it to me? Because everyone else keeps telling me why it can't work. He pointed at the numbers. You've spent your entire career fixing things nobody else wanted to touch. I looked at the proposal again. What do you want? I want you to tell me how to make it work. For the first time in a long time, I felt something other than grief. I felt useful. I spent 6 weeks rebuilding the proposal. I worked late. I made mistakes. I started over. I learned systems I had never touched before. And eventually, Northline won the contract. Marcus shook my hand. You realize you just saved this company? I laughed. No. He frowned. Why are you laughing? Because someone once told me I didn't understand business. Marcus smiled. Then whoever told you that was an idiot. I didn't tell him who it was. That night, I walked home through the rain. For the first time since leaving Evelyn, I wasn't thinking about going back. I was thinking about what came next. Then my phone rang. It was Daniel Cross. I stared at his name. I hadn't spoken to him since the day I left. I answered. Hello. His voice was unusually quiet. Ryan, we need to talk. I stopped walking. About what? A long silence followed. Then he said, about why Evelyn lied to you. I didn't answer immediately. Rain slid from my hair onto my forehead. What lie? Daniel exhaled. The board announcement wasn't supposed to remove you. Then what was it supposed to do? I can't explain this over the phone. Try. Another pause. Your wife's been under pressure from the board for months. I know. No, you don't. His voice tightened. They discovered that someone inside Veilcrest was leaking confidential product information. I frowned. To who? We don't know. Then why are you telling me? Because the leaked files were connected to projects you worked on. My stomach tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying the board suspected you. I almost laughed. Me? They believed you had access. I did. And you had no official position. Exactly. Daniel lowered his voice. Evelyn was trying to protect you. I closed my eyes. The words should have made me feel relieved. Instead, they made me angry. If she was protecting me, why did she publicly remove me? Because the board demanded distance. She could have told me. I know. She could have trusted me. I know. She could have said one sentence. Daniel didn't respond. I realized then that he wasn't calling to defend Evelyn. He was calling because something had gone wrong. What happened? The investigation found something. What? Someone used your old credentials. My grip tightened around the phone. I never gave anyone my password. I know. Then how? That's what we're trying to find out. I looked up at the dark windows of the buildings around me. 7 years of helping Evelyn had left traces everywhere. Passwords, documents, vendor accounts, project access. My name was attached to things I had forgotten existed. Why didn't Evelyn tell me? Because she thought she could solve it herself. I laughed bitterly. She always thinks that. Daniel was silent. Then he said something that changed everything. Ryan, There is one more thing. What? The board wants to blame you. My jaw tightened. And Evelyn? She's fighting them. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt tired. Daniel, I left because my wife stopped trusting me. She does trust you. No. I looked at the rain falling between us. She trusted herself to make decisions for me. That's not the same thing. I ended the call. For the next few days, I tried to forget about Valecrest. But the past had a way of finding me. One Monday morning, Marcus called me into his office. We have a problem. He showed me an email. Valecrest had contacted Northline. They wanted to acquire a minority stake in the company. I stared at the screen. Why? Marcus shrugged. They're interested in our optimization platform. What platform? He smiled. The one you built. I looked at him. That's not a platform. It is now. He handed me a folder. Inside were months of my work. Algorithms. Workflow models. Predictive routing systems. I had built them to solve Northline's problems. Marcus had quietly turned them into something bigger. We're forming a new technology division, he said. And I want you to lead it. I stared at the papers. Marcus, I don't have the experience. You have 7 years of experience. At Valecrest. Exactly. He leaned back. You just spent years thinking you were somebody's assistant. His eyes hardened. You're not. Those words stayed with me. That evening, I went back to my apartment and opened the old drawer. Inside was Evelyn's note. Come home when you're ready. I read it again. Then I folded it. Not because I wanted to keep it. Because I finally understood what it represented. A version of me who had been waiting for permission. I tore the note in half. Then I tore it again and dropped it into the trash. The next morning, I signed the papers. I became director of Northline's new technology division. My life didn't suddenly become perfect. I still worked too much. I still missed Evelyn sometimes. I still woke up from dreams where we were 26 and standing in that tiny kitchen. But the dreams were changing. In the old ones, I was always chasing her. Now, sometimes, I was walking beside her. And sometimes, she wasn't there at all. 3 months after I left, Northline's new platform attracted its first major investor. The investor wanted a private presentation. I walked into the conference room with a laptop under my arm. The doors opened, and I stopped breathing. Evelyn was sitting at the far end of the table. She looked at me. I looked at her. Neither of us spoke. Then the investor smiled and said, Evelyn, I believe you already know our lead architect. Her eyes widened. Ryan. I set my laptop on the table. Good morning. And for the first time in 7 years, she was looking at me not as her husband, but as someone she had completely underestimated. Evelyn didn't say another word during the presentation. Neither did I. I walked her through the system Marcus and I had built, explaining how it reduced wasted routes, predicted supply shortages, and allowed smaller logistics companies to compete with corporations 10 times their size. The woman sitting across from me was my wife. But for 90 minutes, she was simply another executive in the room. When I finished, the investor leaned forward. This is impressive. Thank you. He turned toward Evelyn. Valecrest is already developing something similar, aren't they? Evelyn hesitated. Yes. Then why aren't you partnering with Northline? Her eyes moved to me. That's a complicated question. I closed my laptop. It's not complicated. Everyone looked at me. I continued calmly. Northline built this independently. If they want to discuss a partnership, we'll discuss it professionally. Evelyn's expression tightened. The investor smiled. Excellent. That's exactly the answer I wanted. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. Everyone left except Evelyn and me. She stood beside the glass wall, staring down at the city. You changed. I packed my laptop. People change. You didn't used to talk like that. How did I used to talk? She smiled sadly. You used to explain everything. I paused. Yes. She looked at me. And now? Now I don't think everyone needs an explanation. She looked hurt. I almost felt guilty. Almost. Ryan, can we talk? We're talking. Not like this. I looked at my watch. I have another meeting. Her expression fell. Do you hate me? The question caught me off guard. No. Then why are you treating me like a stranger? I thought about it. Because you taught me how. She flinched. I left before she could answer. That evening, Marcus found me staring at the city from our office. You okay? Yes. That's not what your face says. I smiled. Old history. He didn't ask further. That was one thing I appreciated about Marcus. He never demanded access to parts of me I wasn't ready to share. Over the next several months, Northline grew. Our technology division attracted new clients. We hired engineers. We moved into a larger office. And eventually, investors began using a phrase I had never imagined hearing about me. Founder. I corrected them at first. I'm not the founder. Marcus would laugh. Stop correcting people. But the truth was, I had created something. Not because I wanted to prove Evelyn wrong. Because I had finally discovered what I was capable of when I wasn't spending all my energy trying to keep someone else happy. Then came the next surprise. A woman named Claire Bennett joined our company as head of product design. She was intelligent, direct, and completely unimpressed by my reputation. On her first day, she walked into my office carrying a stack of documents. I hate your interface. I looked up. Good morning to you too. She smiled. It looks like it was designed by an engineer who thinks buttons are a personality. I laughed. You're the first person here brave enough to say that. Everyone else is scared of you. They shouldn't be. I know. She placed the documents on my desk. I'll fix it. And she did. Over time, Claire became my closest friend. Not immediately. There were no dramatic confessions. No instant romance. Just coffee after long meetings. Arguments about product design. Walks through the city after work. She listened when I spoke. And more importantly, she noticed when I didn't. One night, she asked, "Why did you leave your marriage?" I didn't answer. She didn't push. Instead, she said, "You don't owe me the story." I looked at her. "Thank you." She smiled. "But if you ever want to tell me, I'll listen." Something about that sentence stayed with me. Evelyn had once demanded answers. Claire offered space. The difference was enormous. Meanwhile, Vailcrest began struggling. At first, I barely noticed. Then Marcus showed me an industry report. Look, Vailcrest's latest product launch had been delayed. 2 major clients had canceled. Their stock price had fallen. And the report mentioned an internal investigation involving unauthorized access to confidential files. My stomach tightened. Did they find who did it? Not yet. A week later, Daniel called me again. They found the account. I stopped walking. Whose? Yours. My heart sank. But I didn't do it. I know. Then what? Someone copied your access credentials months before you left. Who? Daniel hesitated. We're not sure. Daniel. He lowered his voice. There were only 3 people with administrative access to that system. Evelyn. You. Me. Yes. I stared at the street ahead. Then one of you knows. I think I know. My chest tightened. Who? I'll tell you when I have proof. The call ended. For the first time since leaving Evelyn, I felt something I thought I had buried. Fear. Not fear for myself. Fear that the woman I had loved for 7 years had been surrounded by people she trusted. And one of them had been lying to her. 3 days later, Daniel disappeared. Not literally. He resigned. No explanation. No farewell. No interview. Just a resignation letter sent to the board. Evelyn called me that same night. I almost didn't answer. But something told me I should. Hello. Her voice was shaking. Daniel left. I heard. Do you know why? No. He gave no reason. I sat down. Evelyn, what happened? Silence. Then she said, I found something. What? The person who accessed your credentials also accessed my private files. My stomach tightened. Which files? Financial records. Could they have been trying to frame you? I don't know. Where is Daniel? I don't know. I closed my eyes. Then you need to report this. I already did. To the police? Yes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Evelyn whispered, Ryan, I need to tell you something. I waited. The day I removed you from Vailcrest. She stopped. The board had evidence suggesting you were involved. I know. No, you don't. Her voice broke. They showed me transactions made through an account connected to your old consulting work. I remembered those accounts. I had created some of them years earlier to pay vendors. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid. Of me. Of losing you. I almost laughed. You were afraid of losing me, so you pushed me away? I thought if I kept you away from the company, they couldn't destroy you. They already had. She went quiet. I softened despite myself. Evelyn. I'm sorry. Those were the first words I had wanted to hear for months. But when they finally came, they didn't heal me. They only confirmed how broken everything had become. I believe you were scared, I said. Then come back. I looked down at my hands. No. Her breathing stopped. Why? Because being scared explains what you did. It doesn't undo it. I can fix it. You've been trying to fix everything except us. She began crying. I closed my eyes. There had been a time when her tears could make me abandon every boundary. Not anymore. I hope you find the truth, I said. And I hope you find peace. Then I ended the call. The investigation continued for weeks. Meanwhile, my company kept growing. Claire and I worked closely on the new product. One night, after a 14-hour day, she found me still sitting at my desk. You need to go home. I'm almost finished. No. She took my laptop and closed it. I stared at her. Did you just shut down my computer? Yes. You're very brave. I'm beginning to understand why people say you're difficult. I laughed. She sat on the edge of my desk. You know what your problem is? I have several. You still think rest has to be earned. I looked at her. She smiled. You don't have to destroy yourself to prove you're valuable. The words hit harder than she knew. I looked away. Someone once made me feel like I was only useful when I was solving problems. Claire's expression softened. Then someone was wrong. I didn't realize until that moment how much I needed to hear that. Months passed. The investigation finally produced a name. It wasn't Daniel. It wasn't Evelyn. It was a senior finance executive named Victor Lang. He had secretly diverted company funds through shell vendors and used my old credentials to make some transactions appear legitimate. But there was another discovery. Victor had been working with a private competitor, and the competitor had been paying him to sabotage Veilcrest's expansion. Evelyn hadn't betrayed me because she wanted Daniel. She had been trying to protect the company from a disaster she barely understood. But that didn't erase her mistakes. She had still chosen silence. She had still made decisions for me. She had still allowed me to believe I was disposable. Victor was arrested. The investigation cleared my name, and Veilcrest survived. But the damage remained. A month later, Evelyn came to Northline. She didn't call ahead. She simply appeared in the lobby. When the receptionist told me, I almost said no. Instead, I agreed to see her. She entered my office alone. No CEO entourage. No assistants. No confidence. Just Evelyn. She looked exhausted. I heard you're launching your own company. Northline is launching a new division. You know what I mean. I nodded. She looked around the office. You built all this. With a good team. I used to think you needed me. I didn't respond. She swallowed. Now I realize I was the one who needed you. I sat quietly. She took a breath. I want another chance. The room became very still. There was a time when those words would have been everything. Now they were simply words. I looked at the woman I had once promised forever, and realized I no longer knew how to return to the person who had made that promise. I'm sorry, I said. Her eyes filled with tears. For what? For the fact that I can't give you what you're asking for. She nodded slowly. And for the first time, neither of us tried to change the other's decision. Evelyn left my office without asking me to reconsider. That surprised me. I had expected another argument, another promise, another attempt to convince me that the woman standing in front of me was different from the woman who had watched me walk out of our apartment. Instead, she simply said, I understand. She didn't. Not completely, but she was beginning to. For the next year, we lived separate lives. Our divorce wasn't dramatic. There were no leaked photographs, no public accusations, no ugly court battles, just paperwork, signatures, a final meeting with lawyers. And one afternoon when Evelyn and I sat across from each other in a quiet office and divided the last pieces of a life we had once believed would never end. She offered me the apartment. I refused. She offered me money. I refused that too. You don't have to prove anything, she said. I'm not. What are you doing then? Making sure I leave with only what belongs to me. She looked down. What's that? I thought for a moment. My memories. She gave a small, painful smile. I thought you'd say nothing. I don't want nothing. She looked at me. I just don't want your money to become another reason we stay connected. She nodded. The papers were signed. 7 years ended with the scratch of a pen. I walked outside afterward and expected to feel devastated. Instead, I felt strangely calm. That evening, Claire found me sitting alone at a cafe. You look like someone who just lost something. I did. Do you want to talk about it? I shook my head. Not tonight. She sat across from me. Okay. That was all. No pressure. No questions. She ordered coffee and opened her laptop. I watched her for a while. Then I smiled. What? Nothing. She raised an eyebrow. You've been staring at me for 30 seconds. I was wondering why you never ask questions. I ask questions. Not the ones people aren't ready to answer. She looked at me. That's because I like having people around who trust me enough to tell me things voluntarily. Something inside me softened. I reached across the table. Not dramatically, just enough to touch her hand. She looked at our hands, then at me. Ryan, I don't know what happens next. Neither do I, but I'd like to find out. She smiled. Then let's find out slowly. That was how my new relationship began. Not with fireworks. Not with promises of forever. With patience. And for someone who had spent years believing love meant holding on no matter what, learning that love could also mean giving someone room to breathe was a revelation. My career changed too. The Northline platform became a separate company. Marcus offered me the position of chief executive. I almost refused. He laughed when I told him. Why? I've never been a CEO. Neither was Evelyn when she started. I looked at him. He smiled. You're not becoming her. That sentence stayed with me. So I accepted. The company grew quickly, but I made one rule from the beginning. Nobody would be treated as invisible. Every person on my team could disagree with me. Every major decision had to be explainable, and nobody would ever be removed from a project without being told why. It wasn't revenge. It was a lesson, one I had learned the hard way. 2 years after I left Evelyn, our company received an invitation to the largest technology summit in the region. We were selected as one of the keynote companies. I walked onto the stage and looked at hundreds of people. For a second, I remembered the man who had once stood behind Evelyn during investor meetings. He had carried her documents, fixed her presentation, stayed awake while she practiced speeches. Nobody had known his name. Now people were waiting to hear me speak. I talked about technology, but I also talked about people. Companies don't fail only because of bad products, I said. They fail when people stop telling each other the truth. The audience was silent. Trust isn't built by saying, trust me. It's built by making sure the other person never has to wonder where they stand. When I stepped off stage, Claire was waiting. She hugged me. You were good. Only good. Fine. You were excellent. I laughed. Then I noticed someone standing several meters away. Evelyn. She wasn't wearing a CEO badge. She was simply part of the audience. Our eyes met. She smiled. I nodded. That was all. Later that evening, I received an email from her. I watched your speech. I stared at the message. Then another line appeared. You became the man I always knew you could be. I didn't reply immediately. I wasn't sure whether the message was an apology or a goodbye. Eventually, I typed. I hope you're well. She responded almost instantly. I am. I'm learning. I smiled. Then I put the phone away. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. 3 months later, Vailcrest announced that Evelyn was stepping down as CEO. The business press exploded. Everyone wanted to know why. The official statement mentioned personal priorities and strategic transition. But I knew Evelyn. She wasn't leaving because she had failed. She was leaving because she had finally understood something. Success had consumed every part of her life, and she no longer wanted to spend the rest of it proving she was successful. 6 months after Evelyn stepped down, I received a handwritten letter. Not an email. Not a message. A letter. The envelope had my name on it. Inside, Evelyn had written, Ryan, I used to think losing you meant losing the person who supported me. I was wrong. I lost the person who knew me before I became afraid of failure. I read the letter twice. She wrote about the investigation, about Victor, about the board, about the nights she had sat alone in her office wondering whether she had destroyed the one relationship in her life that had never been transactional. Then came the sentence that stayed with me. You weren't asking me to choose between you and my company. You were asking me to remember that you were my family. I lowered the letter. For years, I had wondered whether she understood what she had done. Now I knew she did. But understanding wasn't the same as repairing. The letter ended with, I don't expect you to come back. I only wanted you to know that I finally understand why you left. There was no request, no manipulation, no promise, just truth. I folded the letter carefully. Claire found me that evening sitting by the window. What is it, Evelyn? Claire nodded. Do you want me to leave? No. She sat beside me. I handed her the letter. She read it quietly. When she finished, she gave it back. What are you feeling? I thought about the question. Sad. Angry. Not really. Relieved. I smiled faintly. Maybe. She took my hand. You don't have to forgive her because she apologized. I know. And you don't have to hate her because she hurt you. I know. I looked at her. How did you get so wise? She shrugged. I'm not wise. I just don't want your past to become my future. That made me laugh. Then I kissed her. It was gentle, simple, safe. And I realized something. For years, I had believed love was supposed to feel intense. The kind of love that made your heart race. The kind that made you afraid to lose someone. But maybe healthy love wasn't supposed to feel like fear. Maybe it was supposed to feel like peace. The following spring, Claire and I moved into a small house outside the city. It had a garden, a terrible kitchen, and a porch where we drank coffee every morning. One Saturday, she handed me a folder. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside were adoption documents. I looked at her. She smiled nervously. "I've been thinking." My heart started beating faster. About building a family. I couldn't speak. She squeezed my hand. "We don't have to rush." I looked at the papers again. For years, I had been afraid of losing people. Now someone was asking me to build something instead. Something new. Something that wasn't based on fear. I nodded. "Let's do it." Our daughter, Lily, came into our lives the following year. She was 3 years old when we met her. She had enormous brown eyes and the habit of hiding behind Claire whenever strangers spoke to her. The first time she finally took my hand, she asked, "Are you staying?" The question broke my heart. I crouched beside her. "Yes." "For how long?" I smiled. "As long as you'll have me." She thought about it. Then she held my hand tighter. "Okay." That single word meant more to me than every promise I had ever made. Years later, Lily would ask why I had so many old photographs. One afternoon, she found the picture of Evelyn and me in the tiny apartment. "Who is she?" I sat beside her. "Someone I loved a long time ago." "Do you love her now?" I looked at the photograph, then at the life around me. Claire was in the kitchen. Lily was beside me. The house smelled like bread. Sunlight filled the room. "I care about her," I said. "But you don't love her?" I smiled. "Not the way I love your mother." Lily nodded as if that solved everything. Then she asked, "Did she make you sad?" I was quiet for a moment. "Yes." "Then why keep the picture?" I looked at the photograph again. "Because being hurt doesn't mean the good memories never happened." She seemed satisfied. Then she ran into the kitchen. I remained there for another minute. The photograph no longer hurt. It simply belonged to another chapter. A few months later, Evelyn visited our house. She had retired from corporate leadership completely. She now ran a small foundation that helped young entrepreneurs who couldn't afford traditional business support. When she arrived, Lily opened the door. "Hi." Evelyn smiled. "Hello." Lily turned around. "Mom. Dad. There's a lady here." Claire laughed from the kitchen. I stepped onto the porch. Evelyn looked at me, then at Claire, then at the little girl standing between us. Her eyes softened. "You look happy." I smiled. "I am." She nodded. "I can see that." There was no jealousy in her voice, only acceptance. And that was when I realized the story between us had finally reached the only ending that mattered. Not reunion, not revenge, acceptance. Evelyn didn't stay long that afternoon. She brought Lily a small wooden puzzle, spoke with Claire for a few minutes, and left before dinner. At the gate, she turned toward me. "Ryan." "Yes." "Thank you." "For what?" "For not turning me into a villain in your story." I smiled faintly. "You made mistakes." "I know." "So did I." She looked surprised. I continued. "I spent years making myself responsible for keeping you happy. That wasn't your fault." She lowered her eyes. "No, but I should have noticed." "Maybe." She nodded. Then she left. I watched her car disappear down the road. Claire came to stand beside me. "You okay?" "Yes." "Really?" I looked at her. "Really?" She slipped her hand into mine. "Then come inside." I followed her. For a while, life became ordinary. And ordinary was exactly what I had once thought I wanted. But success has a strange way of reopening doors you thought were permanently closed. Our company grew beyond anything Marcus and I had imagined. We expanded into 3 countries. Our platform became widely used. Investors started approaching us. One of them wanted to acquire the company. The offer was enormous. Marcus wanted to accept. I didn't. We'd lose control. We'd gain money. I don't need more money. Marcus stared at me. "You're becoming annoying." "I've always been annoying." "No. Before, you were just quiet." We laughed. But I knew what I wanted. I didn't want to build another company where people became numbers. So instead of selling, we created a new structure. Employees received ownership. Junior engineers could become partners. And every year, a portion of profits went towards scholarships for students from low-income families. When the board asked why, I gave them a simple answer. Because success should create more opportunities, not fewer. The decision made headlines. A journalist asked me during an interview, where did that philosophy come from? I thought about Evelyn, about Veilcrest, about the years when I had quietly watched powerful people make decisions for everyone else. I answered honestly. I learned what happens when people forget that every business decision affects a human life. The interview went viral. A week later, I received a message from an old Veilcrest employee. I used to work for Evelyn. She always spoke highly of your problem-solving ability. I stared at the message. Then another appeared. She just never knew how to say it to you. I closed my phone. That was enough. I didn't need more proof. I knew my value now. I didn't need Evelyn to confirm it. Then something unexpected happened. One of our largest clients was Veilcrest. I hadn't known they were considering us. Their new CEO requested a meeting. I almost refused. But Marcus said, if you refuse every company connected to your past, you'll spend your life running from it. He was right. So I agreed. The new CEO wasn't Evelyn. It was a young executive named Samuel Ortiz. He was professional, respectful, and completely uninterested in our history. The contract was signed. And for the first time, Veilcrest became simply another client. Not my wife's company. Not the place that had broken my confidence. Just a customer. That realization felt strangely freeing. Months later, Samuel invited me to a private event celebrating Veilcrest's recovery. I attended with Claire. Evelyn was there too. She looked different. Not weaker. Just lighter. She came over after the ceremony. Your company is doing very well. So is your foundation. She smiled. Someone told me Lily wants to be an engineer. She changes her mind every week. That's good. We laughed. For a moment, it felt almost like old times. Then Evelyn asked, do you ever regret leaving? I considered the question. No. She nodded. Even though we had good years. I don't regret the good years. What about us? I looked at her. I regret that we stopped protecting them. Her eyes became glassy. But I don't regret leaving. She nodded slowly. I understand. Then she looked toward Claire. She loves you very well. I smiled. She does. Evelyn smiled too. I'm glad. That was all. No bitterness. No hidden plea. Just two people acknowledging the life that had happened between them. Later that night, Claire and I drove home. She rested her head against the window. You seemed sad. I was. Why? Because endings can be peaceful and still be sad. She reached for my hand. I held it. Are you happy? I looked at her. Yes. She smiled. Good. I squeezed her hand. I used to think happiness meant getting back what I lost. And now I think it means being grateful for what I have. She leaned over and kissed my cheek. That's a better answer. When we got home, Lily was waiting on the porch. She ran toward us. Dad. I opened my arms. She crashed into me. Did you bring dessert? I laughed. That's your first question? Yes. Claire shook her head. She's definitely your daughter. I carried Lily inside. For a moment, I looked around the house. The photographs on the wall. The books on the shelves. Claire's shoes by the door. Lily's drawings taped to the refrigerator. None of it was impressive. None of it would make a business magazine. But I had never been happier. Then my phone rang. It was Marcus. I answered. What's wrong? His voice was unusually serious. We have a problem. What happened? The acquisition company we rejected has made another offer. I said no. This isn't about buying us. I frowned. Then what? They've started approaching our investors directly. My expression changed. Are they trying to force a sale? Maybe. Who is behind it? Marcus hesitated. That's the problem. Tell me. We found a connection to someone you know. I went silent. Who? Marcus said a name. And for the first time in years, the past didn't knock politely. It kicked the door open. Victor Lane. I stood completely still. That's impossible. He's in prison. Exactly. Marcus lowered his voice. He isn't running it directly. Someone else is. Who? We don't know yet. I sat down. The name Victor Lane brought back memories I hadn't thought about in years. The stolen credentials. The shell companies. The investigation. The months when my marriage had collapsed under suspicion. Marcus placed a file in front of me. We traced the funding through 4 companies. I opened it. The final name belonged to an investment group I recognized. Or Iron Crest Capital. I knew them. They had tried to acquire us 18 months earlier. Why would they care this much? Marcus pointed to one page. Because your technology has become more valuable than anyone expected. I read the numbers. Our valuation had increased nearly tenfold. Someone wasn't trying to buy us because they admired the company. They wanted control. We need legal protection. Already started. I closed the folder. Then I noticed something. A signature. One of the shell companies had been authorized by a former Veilcrest board member. My stomach tightened. Is Evelyn involved? Marcus shook his head. Not according to what we've found. I believed him. But I called Evelyn anyway. She answered immediately. Ryan, did you know about Orion Crest? There was a pause. Yes. How long? 3 months. And you didn't tell me? I didn't know whether it was connected to you. You should have told me. She sighed. You're right. I closed my eyes. The irony wasn't lost on me. Years ago, that exact sentence was what I had wanted from her. This time, she said it without being asked. What do you know? One of my former board members has been working with them. Who? She gave me the name. It was the same man whose signature was on the documents. I felt the pieces connect. Why? I don't know. Find out. She paused. Are you asking me to help? I'm asking because you know how he thinks. Another silence. Then she said, I'll help. For the next several weeks, Evelyn and I worked together. Not as husband and wife. Not even as friends. As two people trying to protect something important. We shared information, compared records, tracked transactions, found inconsistencies, and eventually, we discovered the truth. The former board member had secretly partnered with Orion Crest. Their plan was simple. Pressure our investors, create uncertainty, drive down our valuation, then acquire the company cheaply. But there was one more piece. They had obtained private information from inside our company. Someone was leaking our financial forecasts. We searched every access log. The leak came from a senior employee, a man I had personally promoted. When I confronted him, he broke down. I'm sorry. Why? They threatened my family. Who? Orion. I sat across from him. For a moment, I wanted to fire him immediately. Instead, I asked, Did you tell anyone? He shook his head. No. I looked at him. You should have. He started crying. I was afraid. I understood fear. Maybe more than anyone. But understanding didn't erase consequences. We reported everything. The investigation began. The company survived. And eventually, Orion Crest withdrew. Our employees kept their ownership. Our investors stayed. The person who had betrayed us was dismissed and later faced legal consequences. No dramatic revenge was necessary. The truth had done enough. One evening, Evelyn came to my office. You protected everyone. I looked up. We protected everyone. She smiled. You're still correcting people. Some habits survive. She laughed softly. Then she became serious. Ryan, I need to ask you something. What? Do you think we'll ever be friends? I thought about it. Maybe. She nodded. That's enough. She turned to leave. Evelyn. She stopped. I smiled. Thank you. She looked back. For what? For helping. She smiled. You're welcome. Then she walked out. I watched the door close and realized something important. Forgiveness didn't mean reopening the marriage. It meant I could finally remember her without remembering only the pain. That night, I went home. Claire was in the garden with Lily. Lily was holding a watering can almost as big as she was. Dad. She ran toward me. I crouched down. How's my girl? I planted tomatoes. Really? Yes. They're going to be huge. Claire smiled. She's been telling everyone. I looked at them. My family. My real, present, living family. And suddenly, the old joke came back to me. Accepting wife applications. Years ago, I had written it as a stupid joke. Evelyn had replied. Position filled. I had thought she was claiming me. Maybe she was. But I had misunderstood something. A position can be filled and still be the wrong position. And a person can spend years trying to keep a place that no longer belongs to them. I no longer wanted to be someone's husband because I had earned the position. I wanted to be loved because someone genuinely chose me. Claire walked over and took my hand. You look thoughtful. I was remembering something. What? I smiled. An old joke. She raised an eyebrow. Was it funny? Not anymore. She laughed. Then tell me. I looked at her. No. Why? Because I think I'll write a better one. She smiled. Okay. I squeezed her hand. And for the first time, I understood that the greatest chapter of my life hadn't begun when Evelyn chose me. It began when I stopped waiting for someone else to choose me. 3 years later, I stood in front of a room full of young entrepreneurs and looked at a version of myself I barely recognized. Not because I had become someone extraordinary, because I had finally stopped measuring myself by someone else's expectations. Our company had grown into an international business. We had opened offices in 4 countries. Our employee ownership program had helped hundreds of people buy homes, finish degrees, and start families. And every year, I returned to the same small conference where I had once been introduced as the former husband of Evelyn Vale. This time, the organizer introduced me differently. Please welcome Ryan Hale, founder and CEO of Northline Innovations. The applause was loud. I smiled, but I wasn't thinking about the title. I was thinking about the man who had once sat alone in a hotel room at 4 in the morning, afraid that leaving his marriage meant losing everything. He had been wrong. He hadn't lost everything. He had lost the life he thought he was supposed to live, and that made room for another one. After the speech, a young woman approached me. Can I ask you something? Of course. She looked nervous. How did you become successful after everything happened? I smiled. Slowly. She laughed. I mean seriously. I am serious. She waited. I thought about giving her a motivational answer. Instead, I told her the truth. I stopped trying to prove that someone who underestimated me was wrong. Her expression changed. Then what did you do? I started trying to become someone I respected. She nodded slowly. Was that difficult? Every day. Did you ever want to go back? I looked across the room. Claire was standing near the entrance with Lily. Lily was 13 now. She had grown into a confident girl who argued with me about everything. Claire caught my eye and smiled. I smiled back. Then I answered. Sometimes I wanted to go back to what was familiar. I paused. But familiar isn't always home. The young woman thanked me and walked away. Lily came over. Dad, you're becoming philosophical again. I'm getting old. You're 43. Exactly. Ancient. She rolled her eyes. Claire laughed. That evening, we drove home together. Our house was different now. Bigger. Brighter. But I had refused to make it extravagant. I wanted a home where people could spill things without worrying about expensive furniture. Where Lily could bring friends. Where Claire could leave books everywhere. Where dinner didn't have to be perfect. After we ate, Lily disappeared upstairs. Claire and I stayed on the porch. She leaned against my shoulder. Do you ever think about your old life? Sometimes. Does it hurt? I looked at the sunset. Not anymore. She smiled. Good. I turned toward her. You know what I remember most? What? The night I left. She became quiet. I remember thinking my life was ending. And I was wrong. Claire rested her head against me. You were beginning. I kissed the top of her head. Yes. My phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar number. Evelyn would like to meet you tomorrow. I stared at it. Claire noticed. You don't have to go. I know. Do you want to? I thought for a moment. Yes. Then go. I looked at her. No jealousy. She smiled. Ryan, you spent years being afraid of losing people. She squeezed my hand. I'm not going to make you afraid of loving them differently. The next afternoon, I met Evelyn at a quiet garden cafe. She looked older. Not dramatically, just softer. The sharpness she once carried everywhere was gone. She ordered tea. I ordered coffee. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled. You still drink it too strong. You still drink it too sweet. She laughed. I suppose some things don't change. Some don't. She looked down at her cup. I heard about your scholarship program. It's doing well. You named one after your mother. I nodded. She helped me when I was young. Evelyn smiled. I never met her. You should have. She looked at me. I should have met more of the people who mattered to you. I didn't respond. She took a slow breath. I've been thinking about our marriage. That's dangerous. She laughed. Probably. Then her expression became serious. I used to believe I lost you because I was too ambitious. I waited. But that's not the truth. What is? I lost you because I treated love like something that would wait for me. Her eyes became wet. I thought you'd always be there. I looked at her. I thought so too. She nodded. I was wrong. There was no accusation in her voice. Only regret. I don't want you back, she said. I raised an eyebrow. She smiled sadly. I mean, I don't want to ask you to come back. I understood. I know. I've spent enough years asking people to fit into the life I built. She looked toward the garden. Now I'm trying to build a life people actually want to be part of. I smiled. That's a good life. I hope so. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. She placed it on the table. What is that? The last thing I owe you. I opened it. Inside was the old photograph. The one from our first apartment. I looked at her. You kept this. For years. Why give it back now? Because it's yours. I studied the picture. The two of us looked impossibly young. Poor. Exhausted. Happy. I smiled. Thank you. She stood. Goodbye, Ryan. I stood too. Goodbye, Evelyn. We hugged. Not like husband and wife. Not like two people trying to resurrect something dead. Like two people who had finally made peace with the fact that something once beautiful had ended. When I walked away, I didn't look back. For the first time, I didn't need to. That night, I placed the photograph in a box with old memories. I didn't throw it away. I didn't display it. I simply gave it a place where the past could exist without controlling the present. Claire found me closing the box. Everything okay? Yes. What happened? Evelyn said goodbye. Claire nodded. Properly. Properly. She sat beside me. How do you feel? I smiled. Free. She took my hand. I looked at our intertwined fingers. Years ago, I had believed losing my marriage meant losing my identity. Now I understood that a relationship should be part of your life, not the definition of it. I had spent years protecting Evelyn's dreams, then years rebuilding my own. And eventually, I learned that neither was enough by itself. A meaningful life wasn't about choosing between love and ambition. It was about finding people who didn't demand that you destroy one to keep the other. Claire had never asked me to become smaller. She had never needed me to rescue her. She never treated my success as a threat, and she never made me earn my place beside her. She simply stood beside me. That was love, not possession, not fear, not a position that could be filled or emptied. A choice made every day. The following morning, Lily came downstairs carrying a sheet of paper. Dad, what? I wrote something. She handed it to me. At the top, in large letters, she had written, My family. Underneath were 4 badly drawn figures. Me, Claire, Lily, and a dog we didn't own. I looked at her. Who's that? Our future dog. We don't have a dog. Yet. Claire laughed. She's already planning your next expense. Lily pointed at the drawing. And we're all staying together. I looked at the picture. Something tightened in my chest. Years ago, another person had asked me to promise forever. I had believed forever was something 2 people could guarantee. Now I knew better. Forever wasn't a promise. It was 1,000 ordinary choices. Showing up, listening, apologizing, respecting boundaries, choosing each other when life became difficult. And if one day people changed and their paths separated, love didn't have to become hatred. Sometimes the most loving thing 2 people could do was stop asking each other to remain the people they used to be. That afternoon, I walked into my office. On my desk was a framed photograph. Not the old one. A new one. Claire and Lily standing beside me at our company's annual family day. Everyone was laughing. Nobody was posing perfectly. Lily's hair was messy. Claire was mid-laugh. I looked tired. Happy. Real. I picked up the photograph. Behind it was a handwritten note from Claire. You don't have to earn your place here. I smiled. Then I remembered the message Evelyn had sent me years ago. Position filled. Back then, I had thought those 2 words meant I had been chosen. Maybe they had. But being chosen isn't the same as being valued. A position can be filled. A role can be replaced. A title can disappear. A marriage can end. A company can collapse. Money can vanish. People can walk away. But the person you become when everything familiar is taken from you, that person belongs to you. Nobody can fire you from your own life. That evening, I sat on the porch with Claire. Lily was upstairs doing homework. The city lights were beginning to appear beyond the trees. Claire leaned against me. What are you thinking? I smiled. About an old joke. She laughed. Again. This one's different. Okay, tell me. I looked at her. I once wrote, accepting wife applications. Claire smiled. And someone replied, position filled. What happened? I spent years thinking I had lost the position. She waited. But I eventually realized I was never supposed to be applying for a position. She raised an eyebrow. Then what were you supposed to be doing? I looked at the house. At our daughter. At the woman beside me. Building a life where nobody has to compete for a place. Claire smiled. Then she kissed me. And I understood something I wish I had understood much earlier. The greatest revenge isn't making the person who hurt you regret losing you. It isn't becoming richer. It isn't becoming more successful. It isn't standing in front of them and proving they were wrong. The greatest revenge is waking up one morning and realizing you no longer need their regret. You don't need their apology. You don't need their jealousy. You don't need them to see what you became. Because you already know. I had once walked away from a marriage carrying one suitcase and a broken heart. I thought I was leaving my life behind. Instead, I had left behind the version of myself who believed love had to be earned through sacrifice. I found work that gave me purpose, a family that gave me peace, a woman who chose me without conditions, a daughter who taught me that staying was more powerful than promising. And eventually, I even found forgiveness. Not for Evelyn alone, for myself, for all the years I had ignored my own needs, for every boundary I failed to set, for every time I called silence patience, for every time I mistook being needed for being loved. I didn't hate my past anymore. I simply didn't live there. And if you asked me now what happened to the man who once wrote, accepting wife applications, I'd tell you this. He stopped looking for someone to complete his life. He built a life worth sharing. And when the right person arrived, she didn't fill an empty position. She became part of a home that was already whole. That was the difference. That was the victory. Not that Evelyn regretted losing me. Not that my company became successful. Not that everyone who once underestimated me eventually learned my worth. The real victory was much quieter. One ordinary evening, sitting on a porch with the people I loved, I realized I no longer needed anyone from my past to validate the person I had become. I had finally built a life I didn't need them to understand. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.